Or mute. Or not, it should be here.
I can
Hello, people on Zoom. Can you hear me? Everybody, welcome. Oh, more people coming from the back. Okay, we'll stall a little. I'm so thrilled that you are all here. Hugh would have just loved this, to see you all. So let the stragglers come in so they don't miss anything. And thank you, people on Zoom. Apparently we have 25 so far. I just want to introduce the first person to speak will be Hugh's sister, Nanine. Prepare yourself, man. And at the end, please, if you do not have a copy of All Things Bakelite, please take one. They're up here, and if we run out, contact me. I have one. Dan, would you like to?
Pretty good. Hello. I wrote up a few little like random memories of my dear brother that I wanted to share with you. And it starts off just 7 weeks after Hugh's first birthday, I showed up. Unlike many firstborns, he never tried to harm me. He was a very mellow dude. In fact, Mom said that several times when she was pregnant with him, she thought he was dead. We all know, as we all know, his mellowness was deceiving. Hugh had an uncanny ability to see things that most of us miss, do things that many of us just never get around to doing, and remembering things that most of us don't. I noticed it most over the past 15 years during camp meetings with our cousins, Roberta and Walter. He paid attention. Most recently, he noticed a collapsing flower box on the porch of the main house. Less than 2 weeks before he died, when he was tethered to an oxygen tank and everyone else was splashing down at the lake, he marched up to the shop, built a new flower box, carried it back to the porch, filled it with soil and geraniums. That was Hugh. We were also always close. As children, we regularly tussled like puppies. During one pre-adolescent tussle with our cousin Mark, Hugh flipped me over his back and I broke my nose as I landed face first on Mark's boot. We only stopped for a minute. I wasn't bleeding badly, so we resumed our romp. And during the summer of 1965, we traveled to Vichy, France, where we each lived with a French family and met daily with 8 or 10 other teens for French classes or periodic expeditions to sites such as the medieval city of Carcassonne. On our first bus ride, one of us, God forbid, threw an apple core out the window. Shame rippled through the crowd. Hugh quickly made us all feel better by saying, "That's okay, it's organic." After that, we all enjoyed tossing apple cores out the window and yelling, "It's organic." Try it, it works. In 1968, when our sister Nell had her first major breakdown, our parents stayed home with her and sent Hugh and me and our cousin Jeff to travel with friends from to South Africa, to travel with friends from Johannesburg, and then to Kenya and Tanzania for a safari. Hippie Hugh, with his long hair and beard, was a hit wherever we went, particularly among the majestic Maasai people we visited in southern Kenya. Like them, he was tall, thin, and stunningly beautiful. And he always stepped up to help when I was far away. He helped our family manage many difficult moments with our troubled sister Nell. He was loving and very brave. When Mom was in her late 70s, he took her to camp in the dead of winter so she could snowshoe on the lake. She's in her late 70s. So she could snowshoe on the lake and warm herself by the fire. I would have never have attempted that. Way too cold. But Hugh did it. And when Mom began to suffer from congestive heart failure, he visited her several times each week and called daily for over 2 years. Just slow, steady attention to detail. That is the Hugh I always loved and will miss very much.
Hi, my name is Andrea Scott, and I knew Hugh for more than 50 years. I met him through Nadine, who I met at college in Southern California. Hugh is a great guy in so many ways. He's one of those enviable people who is comfortable talking to anybody, which made him a wonderful host and party goer. He was a natural athlete, excellent at skiing, swimming, rowing, tennis, and paddle tennis, a sport his family took up soon after its invention in the 1930s. It was the pickleball of its day. You should have seen the graceful line he cut through the water when he was water skiing. Just beautiful. One summer, he and my husband Rob tried to see how many sports they could fit into one day. As I recall, the record was 5, if you count juggling as a sport. He was up for adventures. In younger days, we visited his family camp in the Adirondacks in the dead of winter with he and Sherry. The cabin was cozy enough once the fire had been going for a while, but you had to ski across a frozen lake to get there and use snowshoes to use the outhouse. One time we decided to circumnavigate nearby Blue Mountain on cross-country skis. The snow was deep and it was taking longer than we thought. Hugh and Rob alternated breaking the trail. Sherry and I were growing tireder and tireder. The woods grew darker and darker. We were so grateful to finally see the car we'd left at the trailhead. And then, of course, we had to drive back down the road and ski across a frozen lake. Bakeland Camp, that family camp in the Adirondacks, was Hugh's favorite place on the planet, I think. There, Hugh's woodsman self took over, perhaps inspired by his great uncle George, who built log cabins and once canoed the Hudson from its Adirondack headwaters to Yonkers. When we visited camp with Hugh and Sherry and Nan and other friends through the years, he would often disappear into the woods for hours or into the shop for hours, because Hugh was not only a fine woodsman, he was a world-class champion putterer. Taking a walk in the woods with him was a treat. You could see things invisible to most of us: creatures, interesting fungi, unnatural objects. He collected photos of things like fence wire and signs and street curbs that trees had slowly eaten. Need a handle for a rustic cupboard? You could spot the perfect birch root twisting over a rock from yards away. That ability stood him in good stead later when he was collecting materials to create the rustic fences and benches that can be seen around Reading. One of Hugh's creations is a signpost for our house in Massachusetts. Each time I pass it, I think of him now, gone but not forgotten.
Hi, my name is Eric Baer, an old friend of Hugh's and a co-founder of the Magic Circle Theater. And I'm reading this statement on behalf of Guy Jaritzo, who was our artistic director and a founding member and is unable to be here today because, as the Torah says, when man makes plans, God laughs. And the guy, unfortunately, is ill in New York. These are his words. Hugh and I have been friends and colleagues for 50 years, ever since Magic Circle Theater was formed in 1972 by myself, Hugh, Eric, and several like-minded young theater revolutionaries who had a mission and a vision to expand the boundaries of theater. Hugh and this group of young actors have been participating in a couple of workshops on environmental theater with the director Richard Schechner. These actors wanted to form a theater company to further explore their mutual passion. However, they needed a director, and Schechner recommended me. We formed in New York City, felt that we needed to get away from the pull of New York's commercial scene, and so we moved west. First spending 6 months in Vancouver, BC, and then a year in Seattle, where we lived as a collective and developed our first 2 productions, which were very well received. We were invited to bring productions to Chicago, the Body Politic Theater, and Chicago became our permanent home for the next several years. It's very important to note that Magic Circle was not an ordinary company. This was a company of extremely passionate, disciplined, dedicated, and creative actors that I was privileged to direct. The theater was dedicated to the investigation, innovative techniques, and development of new plays that were original and imaginative. At the time, I defined our work as theater that encourages a spontaneous, organic, and total environment between performer and audience. I have since spent a lifetime in the theater, but I hold those years with Magic Circle among the most precious. Now, that's a very, very brief history, but I think what's important about Magic Circle and celebrating Hugh today is that what defined Hugh then defined him for the rest of his life. Hugh has always been a kind and gentle man, but with a steely will. When he puts his mind, passion, and creativity behind something, it gets done. He has always been generous, loyal, and someone you can absolutely depend on. It's not by accident that Hugh and I remain friends for the next 50 years. And let me add that I always considered Hugh to be the gentle giant. He was compassionate, he was empathetic, and anytime any of us needed someone to talk to bounce things off, or if we were having some kind of problem, Hugh was the guy you went to talk. One of the most acclaimed Magic Circle productions was No Antigone. I adapted the Greek tragedy of Sophocles' Antigone into a highly stylized Japanese theater form of No. Hugh and company were extraordinary, performing techniques that Japanese actors would spend years training and developing. About 30 years ago, I was invited back to Chicago because the Chicago Public Library was doing an exhibition on the history of Chicago theater, and No Antigone was being celebrated as groundbreaking, one of the very first Western-Eastern adaptations. I was also asked to donate the entire Magic Circle Theater archives to the special collections of the Chicago Public Library, which was a wonderful honor for all of us. Now, in a very special twist of fate, last time I saw Hugh was just before COVID hit, and he and Sherry and I went to see a production, I was there too, went to see a production of Japanese company who was visiting New York with their production of Antigone. We had come full circle, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that we all shared that special night together. I didn't know then just how perfect this was. After the performance, Hugh wrote, "Guy and Eric, really great time shared with you. Seems so short a time we did our no Antigone, and yet the years are etched in our bodies and minds. Our spirits are vibrant. Thanks for making this a reality. Love and peace. Hugh.
I usually like to work off script, but this is a hard time. So pardon me while I read. Hugh and I were cast in the summer stock production of Butterflies Are Free in 1974. He was Edward Arnold and I was Goldie Hawn. Having not seen us audition together, the director mentioned he's kind of tall. Do you have any platform shoes? And I thought, yeah, I got a pair like so. And then I got a little bit worried about that, and I thought, went out and I got a pair like so. And then she saw us stand next to each other and she sighed and said, yeah, you'll sit down a lot. And we did. So we dated for the next 2 years and moved in together for the following 2 years. And we were married for 44 years. We traveled to over 25 countries, raised 9 wonderful cats, survived a cancer each. It was a very full life. He spent the first 15 years of his life in Reading and the last 26. When we moved back in 1996 to run his family home as a B&B, 9 months later, we bagged that idea. It was just too much hassle and the building codes were going to ruin the Victorian house on Cross Highway. So on to the next phase. We bought and renovated a smaller house on Poverty Hollow. Many of you knew older Hugh. I married a very handsome actor and model. Having stopped acting hustle, though, suddenly he was a farmer with a thriving vegetable garden. Then he became a volunteer fireman, a zoning commissioner. He started designing and making fanciful rustic gates and fences and benches, and he transformed into a documentary film producer, a true Renaissance man, and then a survivor. I think he surprised himself almost as much as he did his friends and family at his warrior-like perseverance after his bout with cancer. Can you even imagine not swallowing for 9 years? He was pretty remarkable. Well, together we were Team Karraker. He made my ideas realities, and I backed him up in his endeavors. And we traveled well together through the world and through life. When I met him, he won me over with the silliest little joke about a talented flea, and with this little ditty, which always makes me laugh. Oh, the liquor was spilled on the barroom floor, and the bar was closed for the night. And out from the corner came a little brown mouse, sat in the pale moonlight. Oh, he lapped up the liquor on the barroom floor as on his haunches he sat. And all night long you could hear him roar, bring on the goddamn cat. Of course, it didn't hurt. Besides being funny, he was tall, dark, and handsome. I won the lottery.
We gotta adjust this a little bit here, sure. Wow, a lot of people house. This is great to see. First, Sherry, great work for everyone who was involved in helping set up the special festivities here. So this is beautiful. I think you'd really appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ben Schuler. I'm Hugh's nephew. And I said a few words. Many of you have been lucky enough to experience the morning calm across the waters of Utowana Lake at Bakeland Camp, one of Hugh's favorite places on earth. When I think of those calm waters, I think of the many years I spent there at that lake, building a strong relationship with my Uncle Hugh. With any calm waters, when you throw a rock into that water, this disruption causes ripples that shoot out in many different directions. If you think about this in terms of relationships, the larger the ripple, the closer you are to that impact. If you're here today, chances are you're one of those bigger ripples created by the impact of Hugh on your life. And boy, he was a big rock. Every one of us here today has some fond memories of Hugh. I've been fortunate or unfortunate in some cases to have have experienced a sustained impact of him across my entire life. One of my earliest memories was during the mid-'80s while Hugh and Sherry were living in Los Angeles. There was actually a picture that keeps popping up on here. And think back to a time when suits had big padded shoulders, perms and acid wash jeans were a thing. Hugh and Sherry were always the best at spoiling their West Coast nephews. What better way to spoil us than to invite the family down from San Francisco to Disneyland for a day of sunshine, consumerism, and laughs? To me, right now, that sounds like a nightmare, but for Hugh, he took that experience with passion, partaking and taking pictures with Mickey Mouse, buying us candy, riding in those stupid teacup rides, or on safari rides, ensuring we had a great time. His patience while he played with me was really what stuck by me. Whether he was being a horse, playing horsey, giving us a ride on all fours, or utilizing his theatrical acting experience to woo me and my brother as he told us stories during story time. He had a way of being just goofy enough at just the right time and impacted us all. As I grew into a young man, it became clear that one of my passions, sports, he had little to relate to. He did his best though, doing what he could to engage with me, like a time when I was watching a baseball game and he asked me what the score in the Super Bowl was. But one thing that we could relate to was food, and lots of it. We would gorge ourselves competitively at the dinner table. I was in my late teens, bulking up for a football season, and he was in his mid-40s with an incredible metabolism. And we would pile our plates high for lunch, breakfast, and dinner, and often going seconds and thirds, and always finishing with dessert. Most often he would win, and now being a man in my 40s, realizing how impressive of a feat that was. He was extremely thoughtful and willing to go above and beyond for those he loved. Nothing exemplified this better than when he volunteered to make the altar for me and my wife Liz on our wedding day. Like many millennials planning their wedding this day and age, we went to Pinterest to find inspiration. We sent over a picture to Hugh that we thought would be a good guide, but Hugh didn't take it as a guide. Hugh took it as a blueprint. He did extensive research on the exact type of wood that was used in the picture. He sourced that wood from a neighboring town and methodically built that altar over several days in a beautiful display that seemingly twisted artfully, just as it had in that picture. And I'm sure it led to many future Pinterest inspirations. In many ways, Hugh was a figure bigger than life. Seeing him on TV, in his many commercials, Just for Men, the Postal Service, to name a few, he represented a person who was so strong that he seemingly could never be hurt. He loved life, and he showed it. He even beat cancer. While physically over the past few years, his throat issues led to physical deterioration, he still managed to power through life with a loving smile and a thoughtful personality. Everyone is known for something, or maybe another way to put it is everyone has something, but Hugh has so much more. He gave the warmest and most sincere hugs. He was extremely generous, knowing just what people needed, just at the right time, sharing everything he could to affect those that he knew most. He was the best person he needed to be for everyone. Especially, he loves his wife, Sherry, my aunt, passionately, and that display of love has guided me to be a better partner in my own relationships. He was so passionate about honoring Leo Hendrik Bakelin and Bakelite and try to make an impact on this world. His film, that there's plenty of copies if you guys haven't seen it here, All Things Bakelite, was a beautiful story capturing the positive and negative impacts Bakelite and future plastic has left on the world. But what's really special about it is it's a family treasure and a story for everyone to feel, to live on in his honor. Sure, Hugh wasn't perfect, but in the end, I don't know anyone who was a better uncle to more people. I tried to think of all of his qualities when I was writing this, and I hope to remember them all because I was afraid someone might come up to me after I get off stage here and tell me I forgot something important. But then I realized, even if I missed something, it would mean another opportunity for us to remember him. And as the saying goes, what is remembered never dies. And as I look around this room at everyone, I ask you to continue to think and share your memories of Hugh and the ripples that he made on our life and the world, so he can live on in our hearts and minds forever.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Marr. I directed Hugh's film, All Things Bakelite. And in 2004, I needed shadow dancers for another film I was doing on Margaret Wickstead, who was the Reading historian. And Bonnie Ensor and Lynn Heisen said, we've got the perfect couple for you. You and Sherry Karraker are great dancers. And she says, and Sherry has her mother's dress that she wore at the original.
It was Joan Ensor's dress.
Oh, Joan Ensor's dress, okay. Well, as Mark Twain says, never let the truth spoil a good story. So I had a vision of this shot because I thought, dancing at the library, I got to tell the story of books, the old library books at Mark Twain Library with the dancing shadows. And they did a terrific job. So that was when I first met you and Sherry, and we stayed in touch. And let's see, in 2009, we started work on All Things Bakelite. We went through all the journals. I think there were 69 books, and went to the Smithsonian a number of times. And through, I would say, Hugh's wonderful drive and my Irish Catholic guilt, we were able to weave a story about Leo Baekeland. You know, making a film is kind of a crapshoot. It's like trying to get an octopus in a shoebox. There are a lot of problems. I know today we call them challenges, but we have a lot of problems in making a film and trying to piece it all together. But we had tremendous talent. I'm thinking of Katerina Posh, Burt Wagner, Paula Peterson, a number of great people that were in the film, Jorge Caicedo, and I won't be able to remember all of them, but I remember one thing about Hugh Karraker is he had tremendous technical abilities as an actor. I would ask him as director to hold that piece of Bakelite up just right there. No, not there, there. And take after take, he hit it right on the nose. So that's much appreciated. And he had a lot of good ideas. I know Craig and Bud Mkhitaryan that worked on the editing side of it, we used to joke like, God damn it, he's got another good idea. We got to consider this. And he was he came up with the plastic Jesus in the movie, by the way. So I'd like to tell one story, but I'm a little intimidated by the fire department being here. If you could just cover your ears a little bit. Young Leo kind of got into chemistry by seeing a fireworks display in Ghent, Belgium back in what, 1860 or something. So I wanted to show that shot of young Leo looking up at the fireworks. And of course, some of my technical whizzes said, oh, we should do it CGI. It'll be much easier. And I just said, yeah, I don't think it's going to work that good CGI. I really want the actor, the young actor, to Zachy Hayes, to be able to see that fireworks in his eyes. So you built a fireworks box, and we had to get it up about this high off the ground. And I went out fireworks hunting and got all these different fireworks together, and we loaded it up. And I don't know if Sherry was there that night, but yeah, I think she conveniently took off. And we did a test in their driveway. And we practically burned down half of Reading and most of Bethel. And we were just trying to get the right amount and the right look of the fireworks, because we had to get the right color, because they didn't have blue back then or something like that. So we had a hell of a good time building this fireworks box, and it worked out great. I think we did 2 or 3 takes and we had it. So he is very crafty. And so just to tell you a little bit about the film in terms of where it's been going, it's been around the world, really, a lot of conferences, and this is on the big screen pre-COVID. Chemical conferences at universities. We had a 2-year run on PBS, 183 stations, 100 million potential viewers. And apparently there were 500, I tried to figure this out, 500 showings. And it turns out a number of the stations did encore showings. They showed it a number of times. So that was very nice to hear that. So right now it's streaming in over 100 countries and in 5 languages. So it's getting out there. Just this month, it was shown in Vienna, Austria, and Naples, Italy on the big screen. So I was so happy to be able to work with him. It's one of the greatest experiences of my professional and personal life. We spent, Mark was saying, said to Mark Huberman, boy, we've been working on this thing for almost 9 years. And he said, what do you mean 9 years? It's been 13 and a half years between doing the research, making the film, and all the roll up to the distribution. So, you know, Leo Baekeland talked about ghost walking. And he said, after I die, I'd like to ghost walk. And I'm hoping that maybe he was up there now, ghost walking with Leo. So Hugh Karraker had it. He had it here, he had it here, but he had it here too. That's it.
Did we come to an idea that the Zoom people could talk or not?
Whatever you want.
Oh, well, first, well, I don't know how to deal with that, so. And the Zoom people- Huh? Okay, start in the room. If anybody would like to come up and make a brief remembrance of their Hugh, I would love to have you do that, please. And thank you to my speakers, you did beautiful.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Frank. My wife Julie and I met Hugh's sister Nanine and Richard. I think it was 1979, and the next year we met Hugh and Sherry, when we all went to the grill together. And after we came back, at some point, I visited. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but I know my mother was driving, and she took me up to your apartment on the Upper West Side, and she came in. I believe I spent the night, but my mother dropped me off. I was old enough to drive, but the circumstances were. She dropped me off, and she came upstairs to meet Hugh and Sherry, and then she left. And when I next saw my mother, she said, "My God, who is that guy? He could be a movie star." She had no idea that he was actually a working actor. And even though I don't know if he aspired for the leading man roles in the movies, he didn't do that, but he was a working actor. Who among us hasn't tried a little Just for Men when our hair started to turn? I know that I subscribed to Sports Illustrated when I saw Hugh on television calling who I assumed was Sherry, saying, "Honey, you won't believe where I'm calling you from," on the speakerphone, on the sneaker phone. And we can also think of the millions of housewives across America who switched to Tide when they saw Hugh tie his white shirt in a knot. I don't know how he got it dirty. I don't remember if he spilled ketchup on it. He tied it in a knot, washed it in the machine, and it came out perfectly white. So even though Hugh might not have achieved the leading man roles in the movies, I know he was the leading man in your life, Sherry, and you were the leading woman. I think we would really be, I don't know if we miss is the right word. We really should recognize how through the hard times of the last 10 years, Hugh and Sherry went through life as if things were almost normal. It's really hard for me to imagine the circumstances under which they traveled, continue traveling around the world. I think about them going into restaurants, into nice restaurants around the world, where you know the chefs take pride in their work, only to ask them from the very outset, excuse me, would you mind blending everything up so my husband could put it in his feeding tube? Once again, near the end of his life, when cancer robbed Hugh of his announcer voice, he continued to express himself, even with either with the Adirondack style fencing and furniture that he would build, or with this film. Many of us around Hugh over the years saw this, kind of rolled our eyes when Hugh talked about his film, and some of us assumed it would never really get finished. It seemed to be an endless project, and sure enough, here it is, and there are copies for everybody. It speaks to his determination. So I was trying to think of a way to wrap this up, and I really haven't come to it yet. Although Hugh, in one of his spokesman ads, reminds us there's no good time for hypertension.
Would anyone on Zoom like to say anything?
You're down below.
Good. Oh, wait, we've got one. Hold on here. Go ahead, Joe. Can you press something?
Thank you. My name is Joe D'Angerio. I have been friends with Hugh since the summer of 1971, when we first met at the University of Rhode Island, doing a summer workshop in theater. I remember when I first met Hugh, how strikingly handsome he was. Now, I'm 5'10", and when I would stand next to Hugh and talk to him, it was like talking to a very beautiful redwood tree. He was just an extraordinary individual during that summer. Many of us came from different parts of the country with different backgrounds. I have kept in touch with Hugh in New York when we lived in New York, and when he and Sherry moved to California. We did plays together. We did acting classes together. In 2016, when John, Mark, and Hugh brought their documentary out to California, Hugh asked me to help him when we went to the American film market, which was difficult, but we found success there. But on the last day, I think it was John and Mark wanted to go to Musso Frank's, which is a very famous, popular steak and fish house in Los Angeles. So we went there, and we ordered steak, we ordered fish, and Hugh ordered soup. And he had his soup through his feeding tube. And I remember saying, this is an extraordinary individual that could do this in public, as to say, this is the way things are for me, with complete abandonment, no embarrassment, just this is who I am. Forgive me for getting emotional here. He was a good guy. I remember what impressed me most over the years was his kindness. I rarely heard him say a bad thing about anyone. And we traveled many roads together. He was a great person and I will miss him dearly. Sherry, my heart goes out to you. You had a long time relationship with Hugh. And I know what impact he made on you and everyone that knew him. So I want to thank you for putting this together. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm in Los Angeles, but I appreciate being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Anybody else online? Looks like not. That's it.
Then I thank you for your kind attention and your friendships with you. And please eat, drink, be merry, and reminisce.